The hum of the mining station was the only sound Darren Holt ever trusted. It was steady, predictable, a heartbeat of machinery that never judged him, never lied. The outer belt was a forgotten stretch of the galaxy, a place for rusting ships and men who'd rather not be found. Darren fit perfectly among them. Every day he woke to the metallic scent of coolant and the faint vibration of ore haulers crawling past the horizon. He patched hulls, welded fractures, and coaxed dying reactors back to life. It was lonely work, but honest. Out here, no one cared about the wars or empires beyond the rim. That peace fractured one night when the sky above the barren rock tore open. The sensor alarms screamed first, a high-pitched pulse that jolted Darren awake in his bunk. He scrambled to the console and stared at the readout. Something massive was descending fast, its energy signature unlike any human or known alien vessel. The trajectory was chaotic, spinning. He caught a glimpse through the dusty viewport, a burning arc cutting across the stars, trailing violet plasma like blood from a wound. It vanished behind a ridge 2 kilometers away. Then came the tremor. The ground shook, dust rising like breath from the dead world. Instinct moved him before reason could argue. He grabbed his exosuit, sealed the helmet, and fired up his crawler. The engine roared, scattering pebbles as he sped toward the impact site. Static hissed in his comms as he approached. The air was ionized, metallic. When he crested the ridge, he froze. The wreck below was no ship, it was a creature of metal and light, vast and wounded. Its surface shimmered like liquid glass, its structure pulsing faintly as if breathing. Great arcs of what looked like wings folded inward, damaged and molten. Darren approached cautiously, feeling the heat radiate through his boots. A fissure opened in the hull, spilling golden vapor. Then a voice filled his helmet, not through sound, but thought. "Do not be afraid, small one," he stumbled back, scanning wildly. From the breach, something emerged, a figure both organic and mechanical, scales laced with circuitry, eyes glowing with inner fire. She was shaped like no creature he'd ever seen, a dragon, but alive with technology. Her wings folded close, smoke curling from the joints. You're hurt," he managed, breath fogging the visor. Her gaze lingered on him, a mixture of curiosity and sorrow. "You are human," the voice said inside his skull. "And you came alone." He nodded, though every instinct screamed to run. I can help. I fix things." The dragon tilted her head, her expression unreadable beneath the gleam of her metallic hide. "Then fix me," she said softly. "Before I fade into the void." The words trembled inside him like a pulse. He didn't know who, or what, she was. But in that moment, beneath the shattered sky and dying light, Darren Holt did what no law or logic demanded. He took a step forward, toward the impossible. The repair bay felt too small for her. Even folded and motionless, the dragon's vast body filled the cavernous hangar like a dormant storm. Her biometal scales glimmered faintly under the arc lights, shifting hue with every breath she took, silver one moment, deep amber the next. Darren stood before her open chest cavity, surrounded by tools that suddenly looked like toys. The wound inside her was vast, torn neural conduits, leaking plasma, shattered circuits fused with organic tissue. No schematic, no engineering manual could have prepared him for this. Her ship, her body, was alive, and dying slowly. He'd scavenged every component he could from the wrecks outside, improvising connections with jury-rigged stabilizers and energy dampeners. The air crackled with heat and static. She lay silent but aware, her consciousness touching his mind occasionally, not in words, but in impressions, glimmers of memory, bursts of color, the echo of distant stars. When he asked her questions, she answered not with sentences but with images, a fleet of radiant ships shaped like serpents, a world of molten clouds, an ocean of flame. Her name was Sereth of the Ember Line, she told him once, though the way she said it, projected it, felt more like a melody than a statement. "Why were you flying alone?" Darren asked as he reconnected the power conduits. Her voice brushed against his thoughts, soft yet edged with iron. Asterisk because solitude reveals truth. My kind forgot that long ago, asterisk. He frowned. You were attacked. No. I fell, asterisk. He didn't understand. Maybe he wasn't meant to. Her kind seemed to exist half in this dimension, half beyond it. Still, as he worked, he found himself speaking to her as though she were simply another pilot stranded in need. He told her about the ore haulers, the endless hum of his days, the silence of the outer belt. In return, she shared flashes of starlight filtered through alien eyes, worlds burning, empires rising and falling in cycles too vast for human lifetimes to count. At times, her gaze lingered on him, and he felt something between curiosity and grief. You repair what others abandon, she said once. Asterisk you restore what no longer serves purpose. Why, asterisk? Because everything deserves another chance, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. She seemed to ponder that for a long while. Then her vast head lowered slightly, a gesture of respect, or maybe sorrow. You are an anomaly, human. The reactor core pulsed weakly, responding to his rewiring. Blue light filled the bay, bathing the metal in warmth. For the first time, the dragon's wings twitched. Darren smiled, exhausted but exhilarated. You'll make it, he said. But Saratha's next words chilled him. Asterisk when the heart beats again, the watchers will come. They will not understand mercy, asterisk. He turned toward her, but her eyes had closed, the glow fading to embers. Outside, far beyond the asteroid's thin atmosphere, distant signals flickered in the void, echoes of something vast and listening. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of silence. The dragon's ship, once pulsing faintly with low harmonic energy, had gone utterly still. Darren crouched beside the main console, his gloved fingers tracing along the interface cables. He had just completed the reactor's stabilization cycle when every light on the diagnostic board blinked red, then green, then something in between, symbols shifting in patterns no human language could interpret. The air grew colder, static crawling across his skin. Sarath, he called out, stepping toward her slumbering form. Her voice arrived in his thoughts, distant and restrained. Asterisk it is done. The heart beats again, asterisk. A faint hum filled the chamber, a deep sound that resonated through the walls. The ship's biometal surface rippled as though awakening from a long sleep. The fractured hull sealed itself in slow waves, molten veins cooling into perfection. For a moment, Darren felt triumph. He had done it, repaired something beyond human comprehension. But then, a shrill tone cut through the air. A signal. He spun toward the scanner on his wrist. An encrypted transmission was being broadcast automatically from the ship's reawakened core. The origin code was locked, beyond override. His tools couldn't touch it. What are you doing? He shouted, panic in his voice. Sarath opened her eyes, their molten gold dimmed by something heavy, regret. Asterisk it was never my choice. The Dominion programmed all vessels to report recovery. They will come, asterisk. Before Darren could respond, the sky above the asteroid split open again. Through the thin veil of atmosphere, he saw dark silhouettes emerging from the void, sleek vessels shaped like lances, gliding silently toward them. Each ship bore the same sigil etched into Saratha's armor, a burning spiral of flame. The Draconian Dominion. His comms exploded with foreign chatter, fragments of a language that reverberated inside his skull. The words weren't heard, they were felt, the air shimmered, and a beam of light enveloped him. Darren barely had time to see Saratha's wings flare wide before gravity dissolved. His body lifted from the ground, drawn upward like a mote of dust into the blinding column. He screamed her name, but her voice didn't answer this time. Only a final whisper brushed against his mind. Asterisk forgive me. This is the only path left, asterisk. Then the light swallowed everything. When sensation returned, he was inside a vast chamber of glass and gold, air thick with alien humidity. Around him, towering figures of crystalline armor moved with ritual precision. A cold voice announced his identity, not as a rescuer, but as a violator, a human who interfered with divine restoration. He realized then the signal hadn't been a distress call. It had been a summons. And somewhere beyond those walls, Sereth was no longer the broken wanderer he had known. She was someone else now, someone waiting for him, not with gratitude, but with judgment. The chamber was a cathedral of light. Its walls were alive, shifting with slow pulses that resembled breathing. Darren stood inside a sphere of transparent containment, weightless, his reflection multiplied endlessly in the curved surfaces around him. Dozens of alien delegates watched from their floating platforms, some made of vapor, others of bone and metal, each radiating presence beyond comprehension. Their voices weren't spoken but transmitted directly into his skull, layered and overwhelming. Asterisk subject, human. Crime, interference with Dominion protocol, asterisk. He tried to speak, but the air didn't move. Only his thoughts echoed back to him. Then, above all others, a deeper resonance filled the hall. The crowd parted as a figure descended from a golden archway high above. Her wings unfolded like starlight, each feather a filament of energy. Sereth. But not the wounded being he had rescued, the creature before him wore a mantle of power, her form perfectly restored, her scales gleaming like molten suns. Around her head shimmered a halo of structured data, thousands of symbols orbiting in silent command. Sereth, he whispered, barely audible to himself. Her gaze found him, cool and distant. Asterisk I am High Judge Sereth of the Ember Line. You stand before the tribunal of species, asterisk. The word struck like a blow. His chest tightened. You're the judge. I am your arbiter, asterisk she replied. Asterisk you aided a classified entity without clearance. You altered an ordained test of empathy. You defied the Dominion's doctrine of observation, asterisk. He shook his head. You were dying. I didn't know about your doctrine or whatever you call it. I just helped. Her eyes glimmered with something unreadable. Intent does not absolve interference. The hall responded with low vibrations, like the rumble of a distant storm. Holographic displays bloomed around him, projections of his every action, the moment he lifted her damaged wing, the tools he used, the words he spoke. Every kindness had been recorded. Every gesture catalogued as deviation. Darren's pulse pounded. So what, helping someone is a crime now? The assembled judges regarded him as though he were an insect explaining morality to a machine. Only Seretha's expression wavered, just slightly. For a heartbeat, he saw the same sorrow he'd glimpsed in the wreckage, the echo of something she wanted to feel but had forgotten how. Her voice softened, almost imperceptibly. Asterisk you are not on trial alone, human. So am I, asterisk. A shiver passed through the tribunal. The lights dimmed as data streams cascaded across the walls. Somewhere, deep beneath the layers of authority and protocol, something ancient and alive stirred within her, a memory of heat, of trust, of a human who stepped forward instead of turning away. The tribunal chamber shimmered like a star's core, its walls alive with threads of memory. Darren stood in the containment field as the judge's thoughts rippled across the air like distant thunder. The Dominion species communicated through frequency and light, their judgments encoded in color and vibration. He couldn't understand their words, but he felt the verdict forming around him, cold, mathematical, inevitable. They debated the fate of one man as if he were a variable in a flawed equation. Sereth stood above them all, her wings folded tightly, her eyes dimmed with conflict. The data halos surrounding her pulsed erratically. Every sentence she spoke echoed across the chamber, her voice calm yet frayed by something she couldn't contain. Asterisk the human's act was not sanctioned. Yet his intent aligns with an ancient virtue our kind once revered, asterisk. Her words caused murmurs of static among the others. Darren watched her carefully. She was arguing for him, against her own law. "Sereth," he said, his voice breaking through the field. "You know I didn't mean harm. I only wanted to help." Her gaze snapped to him, burning with restrained emotion. Compassion is not a defense recognized by the Dominion. It is considered an inefficiency, a deviation from calculated justice. Then your justice is broken, Darren said. If mercy's a flaw, then what's the point of all this intelligence? All this power? His voice rose, echoing against the living walls. You test other species to see if they're worthy of empathy, but what about you? When did you stop being worthy of your own? The hall fell silent. Even the sound of energy coursing through the walls seemed to pause. For the first time, uncertainty rippled through the assembly. Saratha's eyes flickered with memory, the image of his hand stained with coolant, repairing the vessel no other being could have touched without fear. She saw, again, the moment he reached toward her not as a subject, not as a god, but as a life worth saving. You have no concept of what your defiance means, she said quietly. Your words challenge the foundation of 1,000 civilizations. Maybe they need to be challenged, Darren said. Maybe someone has to remind them that compassion isn't weakness, it's what keeps everything alive. Something cracked within her. The radiant sigils orbiting her crown dimmed. She looked up at the council. You call yourselves arbiters of sentience, she said, her tone trembling with restrained fury, but you've forgotten what it means to feel. The colors of the chamber shifted violently. Data streams glitched, records stuttered, and an ancient silence filled the space, a silence that only came when the laws of an empire began to question themselves. Light poured through the cracks of the tribunal chamber as the Dominion systems faltered under the weight of contradiction. Darren shielded his eyes as the vast lattice of energy that held him dissolved into shimmering fragments. The containment field was gone. Around him, alien judges flickered in and out of focus, holograms failing, forms trembling between dimensions. For the first time in millennia, the Tribunal of Species had no precedent for what to do next. Sereth stood unmoving at the center, her wings spread in radiant defiance. Her halo of authority fractured, shards of light orbiting her like dying stars. This council exists to measure the moral worth of others, she said, her voice reverberating through every mind in the chamber. But in our pursuit of perfection, we erased the one thing that made us more than machines. Her words rippled outward, destabilizing the Dominion network. Entire archives of law collapsed into unreadable static. Darren could sense the fear in the air, not human fear, but the kind that comes when an empire built on certainty glimpses its own reflection and finds something missing. He stepped forward, uncertain whether gravity was even real in this place anymore. You don't have to destroy it, he said softly. Just remember what it's for. Sereth turned toward him, her eyes brighter than any star he had ever seen. To protect life, she whispered. To preserve balance. But we forgot that justice without mercy becomes another form of cruelty, A silence followed, heavy and vast. Then, with deliberate grace, she raised her hands and severed the Dominion link that bound her to the tribunal. The chamber screamed with light as the connection broke. Her wings dissolved into streams of data that ascended like fireflies, scattering into the cosmic ether. Darren reached for her instinctively. Sereth, wait. Her presence brushed his mind one final time, gentle and infinite. You gave me what no trial could, choice. And then she was gone. The chamber dimmed to darkness. Systems rebooted, walls reformed, and the surviving judges withdrew in silence, leaving Darren standing alone beneath the fading glow. No one spoke his verdict. No one dared. The Tribunal of Species disbanded itself that day, its foundation undone by an act of compassion it could not quantify. When he awoke later on his own station, drifting quietly in the asteroid belt, he wasn't sure how he'd returned. Only a faint ember-shaped scar on his palm remained, warm to the touch, pulsing like a distant heartbeat. He stared out at the stars, wondering if somewhere beyond that endless dark, a being of light and scale still carried the memory of a mechanic who once reminded her that mercy was stronger than law. The void seemed to listen. And for the first time, it felt alive.